The WNBA just witnessed its most embarrassing meltdown yet, and Stephen A. Smith is absolutely losing his mind over it. While Caitlin Clark sits on the bench nursing an injury that nobody saw coming, Angel Reese is out here pulling stunts that would make a reality TV producer blush. But here's what nobody's talking about: the real reason why Stephen A. just went nuclear on live television, calling out Reese with words so harsh that ESPN had to cut to commercial. If you think Caitlin Clark deserves better than this circus, hit that like button right now and let's expose what's really happening behind closed doors. What Stephen A. Smith said about Angel Reese yesterday sent shockwaves through the entire basketball world. He didn't just criticize her latest antics, he completely dismantled her entire persona on national television. The man who usually picks his words carefully went completely off script, saying, quote, "This isn't about basketball anymore. This is about someone who's more interested in Instagram followers than improving their game." And when you look at the numbers, he might have a point. Angel Reese's shooting percentage has dropped to 38% from the field this season, while her social media posts have tripled. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark, even while dealing with nagging injuries, is still averaging 23 points and 8 assists per game when she's on the court. But that wasn't even the most shocking part. What happened next would make your jaw drop. Stephen A. pulled up actual footage from the Fever's recent game against the Sky, showing how Reese appeared to deliberately step on Clark's foot during a timeout. The replay showed it clear as day. Reese walking past the Fever bench, making what looked like accidental contact, but the slow-motion footage told a different story. Her eyes were looking down, she shifted her weight, and boom! Clark grabbed her ankle immediately. The refs didn't catch it, the announcers stayed silent, but Stephen A. wasn't having any of it. He called it, quote, "the most pathetic display of jealousy I've seen in professional sports." The timing of this whole situation couldn't be worse for the WNBA. January 2025 was supposed to be their victory lap month, celebrating record viewership numbers from last season and preparing for what everyone expected to be their biggest year yet. Instead, they're dealing with a PR nightmare that's making them look like amateurs. Commissioner Kathy Engelbert held an emergency press conference yesterday, but instead of addressing the real issues, she gave the most corporate non-answer possible. She talked about, quote, "maintaining competitive integrity and supporting all our athletes equally." Not a single word about protecting the league's biggest star from what's becoming obvious targeting. Here's where things get really interesting, though. Sources close to the Indiana Fever organization are saying that Caitlin Clark's injury might not be as straightforward as they're making it seem. The official story is a quad strain that needs 2 weeks of rest, but insiders are whispering about something much more concerning. Apparently, Clark has been dealing with multiple minor injuries all season. Injuries that weren't from normal basketball plays, but from what one source called, quote, "unnecessary physical play that crosses the line." The Fever's medical staff allegedly compiled a report showing that Clark has taken more hard fouls and non-basketball contact plays than any other player in the league by a margin of 47%. Stephen A. didn't hold back when discussing this either. He straight up said what everyone's been thinking. There's a coordinated effort to rough up Caitlin Clark because certain players can't handle that she's the face of the league. And before anyone says that's conspiracy talk, let's look at the facts. In 2025 alone, Clark has been knocked to the floor 17 times in just 8 games. That's more than double what any other guard in the league has experienced. When Diana Taurasi was asked about it, she gave this cryptic response that sent chills down everyone's spine. She said, quote, "Rookies need to learn their place, and sometimes that education comes with bruises." But Angel Reese's latest stunt might be the most ridiculous yet. Yesterday, she posted a video on social media showing her quote-unquote training session where she's supposedly working on her three-point shot. The problem? Multiple basketball analysts immediately pointed out that her form was completely different from what she uses in games, almost like she was performing for the camera rather than actually practicing. One coach who wished to remain anonymous said it best, quote, "I've seen middle schoolers with better shooting mechanics. This is clearly just for show." And the timing? Right after Stephen A.'s rant went viral. Coincidence? You tell me. The financial implications of all this drama are staggering. The WNBA's viewership for games without Caitlin Clark has dropped by 68% compared to when she's playing. That's not just a bad number, that's a catastrophic collapse. Sponsors are reportedly getting nervous, with 3 major brands allegedly reconsidering their partnerships if the league can't protect its star players. One marketing executive told reporters off the record that, quote, "We invested in the Caitlin Clark effect, not in watching her get beat up every game while the refs look the other way." What really set Stephen A. off, though, was when Angel Reese tried to play the victim card during her press conference. She claimed that the media was being unfair to her and that she's just trying to play her game. Stephen A.'s response was brutal. He pulled up her stats, averaging 11 points on 38% shooting, but somehow finding time to post 17 Instagram stories per day. He said, quote, "When you spend more time curating your image than perfecting your craft, don't be surprised when people call you out for it." The comparison to Caitlin Clark was inevitable. Clark barely posts on social media, doesn't engage in drama, and lets her game do the talking. The situation got even more heated when former WNBA players started weighing in. Cheryl Swoops, who's been notably critical of Clark in the past, tried to defend Reese by saying the young players need time to develop, but Stephen A. wasn't having it. He brought up how Swoops conveniently forgot to mention Clark's achievements when discussing rookie records, and how she's consistently downplayed Clark's impact on the league. The back and forth got so intense that producers had to intervene and change the topic. Here's something that nobody's talking about, though. The Indiana Fever's other players are starting to speak up. Aaliyah Boston, who's been Clark's teammate and biggest supporter, gave an interview where she carefully but clearly expressed frustration with how the refs are handling games. She said, quote, "When you see your teammate taking unnecessary hits every single game and nothing's being done about it, it's hard to stay quiet." Sophie Cunningham was even more direct, posting on social media that, quote, "Some people are more interested in creating drama than winning basketball games." The conspiracy theories are running wild now, and honestly, some of them don't seem that crazy anymore. There's talk that certain veteran players held a meeting before the season specifically to discuss how to, quote, "handle the Caitlin Clark situation." One anonymous source claimed that the meeting included discussions about making sure Clark, quote, "doesn't get too comfortable." When asked about this, the WNBA Players Association gave a non-denial denial, saying they don't comment on private player meetings. That's not exactly reassuring. Stephen A.'s most powerful moment came when he addressed the league directly. He said, and I quote, "You have a once-in-a-generation talent who's bringing millions of new fans to your sport, and instead of protecting her, you're letting jealous players run her into the ground. If Caitlin Clark gets seriously injured because of this negligence, the blood is on your hands, and so is the death of your league's momentum." Those are strong words, but when you look at the evidence, it's hard to argue with his logic. The latest development just dropped this morning, and it's a bombshell. Apparently, Caitlin Clark's camp is considering filing a formal complaint with the league about player safety. This would be unprecedented. A star player essentially calling out the entire league for failing to protect them. The legal implications could be massive, and it would force the WNBA to actually address what's been happening instead of pretending everything's fine. Meanwhile, Angel Reese continues to dig herself deeper. Her latest interview was supposed to be damage control, but it turned into another disaster. When asked directly about the footstepping incident, she laughed it off and said, quote, "People see what they want to see." That response infuriated Stephen A. even more. He went on another rant this morning saying, quote, "This isn't about interpretation, we have video evidence. And your response shows exactly what kind of person you are, and the attendance numbers tell the real story here. When the Fever plays, arenas are packed with an average of 17,000 fans. When they're not playing, some teams are struggling to fill 5,000 seats. The Phoenix Mercury had to give away free tickets last week just to make their arena look presentable on TV. One team executive admitted anonymously that, quote, "Without Caitlin Clark, we're back to being a niche sport that loses money every year. What's really concerning is the long-term damage this could do to women's basketball. Young girls who started watching because of Caitlin Clark are now seeing their hero getting targeted and the league doing nothing about it. Parents are questioning whether they want their daughters playing in a league that apparently condones this behavior." Youth basketball registration numbers, which had been rising thanks to the Clark effect, are starting to plateau in some areas. Stephen A. made another excellent point that everyone seems to be missing. He said the WNBA is acting like a small-time operation when they should be thinking big picture. Instead of embracing their meal ticket, they're letting petty jealousies and egos destroy what could be their golden era. He compared it to if the NBA had let players rough up Michael Jordan in the 80s because they were jealous of his spotlight. Imagine where basketball would be today if that had happened. The social media reaction has been overwhelmingly on Stephen A's side. Hashtag Protect Caitlin Clark has been trending for 3 days straight. Fans are calling out Angel Reese left and right, with many pointing out the hypocrisy of her claiming to be about women supporting women while seemingly targeting the league's biggest star. Even celebrities are weighing in, with several high-profile athletes from other sports expressing disgust at what's happening. But here's the kicker. Sources are now saying that Caitlin Clark might not come back from this injury as quickly as expected. Not because of the physical damage, but because she's genuinely questioning whether it's worth it. Imagine that. The player who single-handedly transformed the WNBA's relevance is considering whether she wants to keep playing in a league that won't protect her. If that doesn't wake up the executives, nothing will. The money trail is fascinating too. The WNBA's new TV deal, worth hundreds of millions, was largely based on projections that included the Caitlin Clark factor. Without her, those numbers don't add up. Networks are reportedly already having emergency meetings about contingency plans if Clark's absence becomes long-term. One executive was overheard saying, quote, "We didn't pay for the WNBA, we paid for Caitlin Clark and the WNBA." Stephen A's final words on the matter were perhaps his most prophetic. He said the WNBA is at a crossroads right now. They can either protect their golden goose and ride her coattails to mainstream success, or they can let jealousy and incompetence destroy everything they've built. The choice seems obvious, but based on their track record, I wouldn't bet on them making the right decision. As we head into the rest of January 2025, all eyes are on what happens next. Will the league finally step up and protect its biggest star? Will Angel Reese continue her attention-seeking antics? And most importantly, will Caitlin Clark come back the same player, or will this unnecessary targeting have taken its toll? One thing's for sure, Stephen A. Smith isn't going to stay quiet about it. He's promised to keep calling out the nonsense until something changes. If you're as frustrated as Stephen A. about this whole situation, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell because we're going to be covering every development as it happens. The WNBA can't sweep this under the rug anymore, and with voices like Stephen A. Smith refusing to back down, change might finally be coming. Comment below if you think Angel Reese owes Caitlin Clark an apology, or if you think the league needs to step in immediately. This story is far from over, and the next chapter might be the most explosive yet.